As I've mentioned a few times, this Type 16 caliper is obviously larger than what came on the car, particularly with respect to this piston size here. One thing that we have to keep in mind when we're changing braking systems is that when this brake setup over here was originally selected for the car, the ratio between the diameter of this piston and the piston inside the master cylinder is quite deliberate. This is the master cylinder that came on this car. The casting mark here says 5/8. So the engineers decided that a 5/8 piston was the ideal mate to this 48mm piston in the caliper, or at least close enough. And because we know that the later Mark 1 GTs in 66 and 67 came with this larger P16 brake, we can use that information to our advantage and simply refer to whatever size master cylinder they spec'd for these cars, which happens to be 0.7 inches. Which is a very common size. We can order a new one of those. They'll fit into lots of Datsuns, I'm sure plenty of other cars as well. Importantly, I believe we can get that larger 0.7 inch size in a dual circuit design. And that just means that instead of one big pot here on the master cylinder, we'll have two. And instead of one output fitting, we'll have two or sometimes three. And having a dual circuit design gives us better redundancy for the braking system. It means if a brake line is to let go somewhere downstream, it is completely isolated all the way back to the master cylinder, and we'll still have a separate functioning circuit that is unaffected. Much safer, which is why all modern cars utilize them. So hopefully we can do the same on this car when we get it back on the road. Fast forward, and after a little bit of time back in the ultrasonic parts cleaner and just some general scrubbing, degreaser, and we have these. These ones actually haven't even been sandblasted yet, and you can see how much better that is than what we started with. And here are the other two in a partially assembled state. Once fully assembled and restored with new seals and everything, these pistons would ordinarily sit a little bit further out than this, but this is certainly good enough for checking basic fitment back on the hub. So let's crack on with that. You can see with all this mounted together, the clearance is pretty good. The disc clears, there's enough space between the front of the caliper and the hub. The only thing I will have to do is drill and tap holes in the bottom of the strut one size up so that it can use the bolts that these calipers came with. The locating holes in the original calipers are just ever so slightly smaller.